I still haven't gotten an answer to the question of why do you need more than 83 bytes to make sure that Bitcoin stays as money?
I'll give you an
He,
answer. I'll give
he
you an answer.
doesn't.
You don't, and it's you could put up to 1 megabyte. I hope you understand that. 1 megabyte is the rule. That is the law. 1 megabyte.
I was under the impression that an 83 byte limit, but you're saying it's a 1 megabyte limit.
1 megabyte limit.
A block can only have
Bitcoin Core is not Bitcoin. All right. Bitcoin Core sets rules for Bitcoin Core. Consensus rules is the law of Bitcoin. And the law of Bitcoin says that you could have up to 1 megabyte op return limit. That's the law. Laws are above rules, right? And by the way,
Yeah.
every rule, every version has a different rule. So if you don't agree with the rules of version 30, you could stay with the rules of version 29. And now with LLMs, it's so easy to customize your own rules. Like you can do whatever you want. You don't even need to follow whatever Core does anymore. You could set your own rules. But the law, you can't. You can't change the law. The only way of changing the law is by trying to fork it, and that's exactly what Lucas and Mechanic are trying to do right now. They're trying to change the law. What version 30 did was change a rule on a specific version of an implementation. Does that clear things up a little bit? Like that's basically the crux of it. People don't understand what happened. Like Luke made it seem that Bitcoin Core did something something new, something that they've never done before. But they do this on every release.
They actually
A different
made
rule.
relay policy more in line with consensus rules, essentially, right? Consensus rules are 1 megabyte, and they opened
Yeah.
up the relay policy to be 100 kilobytes. Is that correct for the op return?
The reason they did that, they didn't go and the Bitcoin Core is not going to go and ask every single user that uses Bitcoin. There's too many people, right? There's too many people in the world. Too many people view Bitcoin differently. So all they do is they just look at the network. They look at the health of the network. They look what's going on. Everything's within consensus rules, right? So if someone tried to do a JPEG that's bigger than 1 megabyte, obviously that's not going to work. Miners will ignore that because consensus
An
rules
op
all of
return
our
of
nodes
JPEGs.
op return.
Why did they raise the op return limit? Why did they
Yeah.
do it?
Did they ever actually answer that? Why did they raise
I
it to
just
100
said it
kilobytes?
because people were going around Bitcoin Core's rules,
Yep.
and they were going around their rules. So people were doing it. They were
Large
like,
op
no,
returns were already
they're like
propagating and getting
the
confirmed.
law is 1 megabyte. Fuck Bitcoin Core. I don't care about their rules. I'm going to create my own. The law is 1 megabyte, right? That's the law. I don't like Bitcoin Core.
So why did they raise?
And when
But
you
why
have
did they raise
that
the?
I
here's the
understand
reason
that.
why, Puncher. When you have the mismatch between how some users are using the network, even if you disagree with how they're using it, and then how your node is representing that network in your mempool and how it's propagating compact blocks, that mismatch causes problems for nodes and problems for the network at large. And so what Core is trying to do is they're trying to match the actual usage and maybe projected usage of a network. And they're seeing that, oh, large op returns are now freely propagating and regularly being confirmed in blocks. Therefore, we're going to loosen this policy because it's clearly not working anymore, right? And we want our nodes to be aware of those things when they're in the mempool because we want them to be able to compete and outbid them if they need to. And we want our compact blocks to be able to relay faster when all of the nodes are aware of those transactions. Those are the reasons why you want to actually have a policy that better matches the real usage of the network, right? So that was
What
basically what
Ricky?
happened.
What problems does it cause for a node, and why would you not want
None.
to continue with the? Was it
I'll
right?
tell you. I'll
No,
tell you
no,
the problem.
he's saying what problems does the compact, like the limitations of compact block and the limitations of your visibility into mempool
Oh,
cause?
okay, yeah.
That causes real problems. So, if you don't have visibility into transactions waiting in the mempool, right? I mean, if you are missing a substantial amount of transactions or high fee paying transactions, and say you're a second layer operator, right? Like you're running an LSP or an ARC service provider, you need to have or even just a regular Lightning node. You need to have high visibility into who you need to outbid in order to get into a block if you ever need to do a justice transaction or anything like that. So there are real world scenarios where you want to have the best visibility possible into who you need to outbid for block space, even if the people you're outbidding are spammers and shitcoiners, you still want to know that those transactions are waiting so you can outbid them, right? Because if you have no visibility, I mean, imagine this: like you're trying to tell a jet pilot, "Hey, like these fucking people, they're retarded. So we're just gonna make sure you don't see them, even if they're fucking gonna like shoot you down in the battlefield." That's retarded. You want to see all of your enemies. You want to see who you need to outbid in Bitcoin. It makes no sense to
I
try to
appreciate that, but
ignore an enemy who's
I,
bidding for block space.
Is that
I
visibility you're
appreciate that.
talking about
So
different than the visibility that Citria wanted on the Opportune?
They're not
So
using Opportunity.
Citria never wanted larger op returns.
They're
This is
not
another
using Opportune
misconception.
No,
today.
no, no,
They're
no,
not
no,
using
no, no. This is
Opportunity.
all besides the point. The visibility thing.
So this is completely separate. And in terms of Citrea, like I think that actually, so it's interesting because I think that's what initially sparked the conversation. But then if you follow the dev mailing list, it devolved
2014.
into the conversation, the conversation about compact block relay, fee estimation, blah blah blah, the stuff I just mentioned, right? So I think the meat was those things, but the spark was the Citrea thing. And that's different because what Citrea was doing is because of the limitation, right? And because of their particular use, where they need to have that kind of high visibility into their transactions being propagated, they started using fake pub keys instead of just one large op return, right? Because they could just use fake pub keys, get everything relayed to all the nodes around the network, have high visibility, and so they just ended up doing that route. And I think core devs saw that and they said, well, that's a bad incentive to keep open, so, let's consider this PR. And then once the PR was considered, then you had fucking people like Peter Todd saying, well, let's boost this PR by starting to uh, propagate and mine larger op returns with Libra Relay. So then larger op returns started to get in, right? And then you had the snowball effect of everyone pushing back, which kind of, got it even more attention, and more spammers started doing it just to kind of egg people on, right? And you just had this back and forth where it became an issue that started from really a non-issue. Like large op returns were already possible, right? There was nothing preventing them from happening in terms of the actual laws of Bitcoin. People could do it if they wanted, right? They could go directly to miners. If anyone kind of got on the radar of Peter Todd, they could have gotten it merged into Libra Relay, and there's plenty of pools running Libra Relay, so those freely get to miners, right? So like the idea that large op returns weren't possible before is false. They've always been possible. It's just nobody cared about them because you get 4 megabytes in an inscription anyways. Like why would you like why would you put a megabyte JPEG in an op return when you can get a 4 megabyte, or you can get four 1 megabyte JPEGs in an inscription? It just there's really no incentive for that. But because people got so upset about it, now the incentive is just to piss people off, and because it's free publicity when you make a fucking, op return JPEG mint or whatever, right? And so everything just built up on top of each other for no fucking reason because people were confused about it. They didn't really understand it. Core didn't do a good job, communicating it to plebs, even though all this conversation is in the dev mailing list if you go read it, right?
that
And then
with
you
you. That's
had
the first time I heard someone explain that who didn't use the word moron, retard. You don't
well, I
understand.
said retarded a couple times,
That's why he
I
but
gets
know,
paid to break
I
but
books.
know. But let me just recap what you said so I understand. So there was no 83 byte limit, and you could go around that. And because that created some difficulties with the node runner, and because you wanted visibility for layer two transactions of the mempool, then the decision was made by Core to open up the opportunity to 100,000 bytes. Is that right?
yeah, and
Okay.
by the way, if you look at all the behaviors of Core in the past, let's say four versions of Core, like V28, 29, 30, 31, and then up the upcoming 32, all of the major updates that have happened. And by the way, the data carrier size relay policy is not a major update. Like that's like a small cliff note on the actual updates that have been going into Core recently. But all the actual major updates have been policy refinements in order to optimize layer twos, right? It's been like, um, cluster mempool, fucking package relay, right? Ephemeral anchors. It's like all these things that are making Lightning better and making Arc possible have been going into core, and it's all policy based updates. And so when you look at it in the framework of what has actually been happening in core and all the things that they've been working on, it's just a small little update, also policy related, that kind of fit into the whole puzzle, right? But it got blown way out of proportion. And part of the reason why, this is the part I didn't get to yet, right, is because when the PR did get brought up for merger or whatever, then you had Mechanic and some other people who went on there and started getting upset about things, right? Because they felt like their voices weren't heard, right? And I think even Chris and Luke, and I'm not sure if Mechanic was on the dev mailing list, but there was like opposition in that mailing list, right? You can go through, you can read it, you can see where they oppose things and the points they bring up. And the fact that it still was brought up to get merged, then Mechanic went in, started yelling, and pointing fingers, saying like, "Oh, well, you're compromised because you're, invested in Citrea or whatever." And then that's when things really kind of went nuclear
Was there any, to your knowledge, was there
because
any
because
merit?
because a GitHub Comments
Was there any
place
merit
is not a
to?
place to be having those types of conversations,
I
right? They
got you.
got blown.
I totally understand what that there were very strong positions on both sides, and one side felt like, hey, this is becoming a trend. They're just telling you, fuck you, we're doing it. Core. And so they were upset. Was there any a time or that you know of that some third party like a Citria came in and monetarily incentivized anybody to do something or make a change or increase the opportunity or
No,
get paid by Citria?
I don't think so, because Citrea didn't. I still don't think they're using large drop returns.
They're
Like they
not.
don't. They
They're not
really
using
don't
opera turn
care,
at all.
right? It doesn't make their protocol more efficient or cheaper or anything like that. And they had already had the designs in their white paper to use fake pub keys. And I don't think they've changed that to the best, as far as I know, at least. Right. And again, large
Okay,
op
thanks.
returns from a spam perspective, large op returns don't really make much sense, right? Like you can make a up to a 4 megabyte inscription JPEG, right? You've heard of like the 4 meg blah 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 blah, right? Like those things, you can make them huge because they're in the witness, and you get the witness discount. Um, and you'd be paying the same amount if you wanted to make a 1 megabyte op return. So it just doesn't really make sense from a JPEG perspective. And one could argue from a spam perspective, maybe the ability to have a bunch of op returns um, associated with a single transaction, which was one of the additional uh, relaxing things of policy that they did, like that could make large rune mints cheaper. But I don't think that optimization was made for runes. I think it was made for second layers, and now you have spammers taking advantage of that relay policy. But again, those things were always possible. It's just a matter of getting a miner to accept it, right? Because by law, you can do these things. It's just that you need to actually coordinate with a miner to say, "Hey, I'm going to send you a big package of all these things with one transaction." It's totally acceptable by law, but none of you actually have any rules to do this. And so you either need to do like a different client, like Libra Relay, that has the additional rules, right? Which a lot of them were, or, I guess if you find some loophole in the new rules in core, you can piggyback on that as well.
So what
But
doesn't
I
make
think the
sense to me is
important
that
part is that
visibility
all of
issue.
these optimizations are 4 second layers. Like to think that any of these optimizations were made for spam, I think is just total nonsense, right? It's complete propaganda. So when I hear these things like Core's doing these things for spammers, it's like, dude, you have no idea what Core's working on right now, right? You probably don't even know the half of it.
So that visibility issue, I
Wicked.
wanted to circle back to it. You're saying that more standardized mempools are better for predicting things for second layers, Well, who were the second layers that needed that? Do they exist yet?
The Lightning
Lightning and
Network.
Arc.
The Lightning Network. So I replied to the space and tagged you in the tweet, and it actually shows the history of large op returns prior to version 30. And this is actually good news mutually. I think everyone can agree in that Bitcoin Core was not setting this with version 30, and people were bypassing Bitcoin Core to create these large op returns. I tried pinning it to the room. I wasn't able to pin it to the room. Uh, but if you look at the replies in the space, or like I just retweeted it, you can look at the largest op return in every block, basically since like 2012, right? And you can see a year and change before version 30 was even released, which changed the op return limit. Large op returns were getting into blocks because people were bypassing the rules of what Bitcoin Core had for its default relay. And because of that, Bitcoin Core, in response to the network, because Bitcoin Core follows the network, it doesn't set the network rules. It follows the behavior on the network. Version 30 was updated. And this is important as to why version 30 did that, was because since it was not part of the standard reference client people use of Bitcoin Core, miners you can almost view like relay policy like a cartel. Pools like Mara were able to gain extra revenue by bypassing and breaking from the cartel and modifying the op return rule. So by updating the op return rule, you were bringing more fair competition for the ability for all mining pools as they spin up their software and their nodes to have an equal shot and opportunity at being able to monetize those transactions. It's exactly what you saw with sub 1 sat per vbyte transactions, in that when the mempool was empty, there is some bid that
And full
exists out there.
RBF.
Yeah, and full RBF, right? But like that was a couple years ago, right? I'm just trying, like in the past like 2 years, like subsat like transactions. What happened was miners who defected from the cartel of relay policy were able to make more money than those who just ran the reference client of Bitcoin Core. And because of that, they update the rules, which is good news because it means Bitcoin Core is not in control. You empirically can see that everyone was defecting from Bitcoin Core, and then Bitcoin Core was forced to update their relay policy to accommodate what behavior was being observed on the network. It's an important cause and effect of, not because Bitcoin Core did this, spam existed. It was people were routing around Bitcoin Core's policy to begin with, and because of that, Bitcoin Core had to update to be able to make sure that people who defected from Bitcoin Core were not going to get marginally more revenue in their block construction compared to running Bitcoin Core.
Also, another
So I think
That
it's an
is
important
that is
data point.
helpful. That is the first time anybody articulated that ever.